Hello, hello, ladies. So excited to be on here with you today. It's been a while, right? I haven't done a training in here for quite some time, and I thought today is a good day to do it. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm seeing a lot of chatter on Facebook lately of people, well, they're telling themselves stories that are keeping them from maybe taking action to do things in their lives. For example, I actually was on a Clubhouse room this morning and I was co-modding with someone else. I've been doing this for a few months. And one of the things that came up when we were talking about the importance of sales funnels or having funnels for your business, the person who was the lead mod today, this was her room, and I was co-modding with her. But we were talking about what it means to be actually engaging with people in your feed, people in your life, telling them about what you do. And one of them had said that they didn't want to be a bother. They didn't want to feel like they were being pushy. And I get that. That's important, right? It's not about being pushy. It's about showing up and letting people know who you are and what you do. And maybe somebody will resonate with you. And so it was really interesting, the story she was telling herself around that, because she felt like, no, I don't like social media and she's not going to do it. And they go, well, how do you, and when you start thinking that way, like, how do you move yourself out of that mindset into believing that what you want for your life is really possible, but it's getting out of your head, not letting that become your truth, especially if you don't want to show up in social media. And by the way, social media, of course, is not the only way to connect with people. Obviously, you want to still connect with people real life. And there are other ways, again, to connect. But that was just something she was telling herself as her story. So if you saw my posts earlier today, well, first of all, today's topic is truth or fiction, the stories we tell ourselves. And if you saw my 3 posts that I posted earlier today, I posed 3 questions, truth or fiction questions for you to get you thinking. So feedback is meant to help you grow, or is a personal attack on your character? That's an interesting question, right? It depends on how you're looking at it. And I want you to know the answer to that question I'm going to give you, but I wanted to go through the questions first. The second question I posed was, only the chosen few succeed in life. Is that true? And then the third one I put was, public speaking is only for those who were gifted with gab. So those people who are the gift of gab, only they are chosen, are only they can be public speakers, right? Only they can have a public speaking career. So I wanted to ask you, I want you to start thinking about it. What are the stories that you are telling yourself? Because again, these questions were really meant for you to start thinking about, what if these questions interesting? What am I saying to myself is my truth? So first of all, we'll come back. Well, actually, let me just go through these questions really quick, because I want you to start thinking about this. And I'll talk about the feedback one after. But this one here, only the chosen few succeed in life. I used to think that way. This is why I put this question there. It was something I used to think was true. I felt, because I grew up in I grew up, well, I mean, we were pretty much broke most of the time. My mom did the best she could, and I'm not putting her down at all. She was a single mom, raising 3 babies, trying to do the best she could with the circumstances she was dealt. And she raised us, and we never went hungry. We always had food on the table. We always had clothes on our back. Did we have the newest trends? Did we have expensive clothing? No. Did we eat out a lot? No. In fact, we ate home cooked meals every single day. And going out to a restaurant, well, that was a treat. And we only did that it was very on rare occasion that we would go out, whether it was somebody's birthday. And usually we would have dinner at home and she would make a cake. So it was very rare when we would go out for dinner. But when we did, that was a really special occasion. And so I saw all my friends growing up with a lot, right? They had both their parents. I thought that was amazing that they had mom and dad in the house. They also lived in a freestanding structure of their own. It was their own, very own home. They had their own room in their own home. I mean, I had my own room, but I was living in social housing where they were living in a house. They had, like, I thought they were rich because they lived in these big houses. Well, I mean, they weren't huge by any means, but for someone who, like myself, growing up, seeing that, I thought, wow, they're rich. And so I always felt they were the chosen few that got whatever they wanted. They were the ones that were going to succeed. And if I was going to succeed, I had to like work my tail off. Like I had to work really super hard. And even when I did succeed, I felt sometimes I wasn't deserving of it because I thought this has got to be a fluke. Why am I succeeding at something I didn't grow up with much? I'm not a chosen one. So how come I'm succeeding? So that can be a story that we tell ourselves and we start living that as our truth. The third one I put was public speaking, right? Is only for those who are gifted with gab. This comes from maybe you feel like perhaps something happened to you when you were younger and maybe you were in school and you were giving a presentation and people laughed at you and they thought, well, and you thought, well, maybe that's like, I'm not gifted. Some people find it easier to talk in public. And so only that, because they find it so easy, because I'm a little shy, only they are allowed to be a public speaker. So I want you to know, is this a story that we tell around something? It can be a lie that we're telling ourselves because we don't know any different. We think that's the truth and we're allowing that to be our truth. Now the feedback one we're going to come back to later. So we're going to dive in. So now that I've got you thinking, we have 5 senses, okay? So we have the sense of smell, sight, hearing, taste, and touch, right? The 5 senses. And through our senses, we navigate the world around us. And so through our senses, we send signals to our brain about the experiences we're having, whether it's something we see, something we're hearing, something we smell or taste, or we're touch, right? We're touching. And then in turn, our brains are programmed to make sense of whatever our senses are giving back to us. What our brains are programmed then to make sense of the world around us. So is that a fair assumption? So because now we're using our senses to navigate and tell ourselves about what we're experiencing and trying to make sense of the meanings that we're giving to those things, that's when our inner voice has the potential to create our reality, right? Remember what I said, it's the stories we're telling ourselves around just these 3 questions that I posed to you. Like, again, only the chosen few succeed in life. That was a truth that I held on to for many, many years. In fact, decades. So what we say to ourselves matters because we're listening. We truly are listening. In fact, we're listening more to ourselves. I mean, obviously, no one else is up here with us. No one else is in here with us, but we're listening more to our own inner voice than we are to other people around us, right? Because you are always in your head. You are always with yourself. 24/7. You are the one thinking the thoughts and you are the one feeling the feelings, which means you have the potential to create the story of your life, whether it's good or whether it's bad, right? So what are you telling yourself is truth to you? And are you ready to debunk it, right? Because is it truth or is it fiction? And a lot of the time that can be fear-based. So is it true or is it fiction? So let's talk fear for just a second and how it likes to piggyback onto our emotions, especially when we're in the middle of change or trying something new or stretching ourselves. So I'm working with somebody, she's in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. South Africa, is that South Africa? Yeah, Zimbabwe. She's in Zimbabwe. And one of the things which was interesting as we started working together, she talked a lot about how her life had changed. They used to have, like, when her husband had decided that he didn't want to do the type of work that he was doing. He wanted to work within the field, within the field that he had been, educated for. And so because he had not been working for a while, because he had left the position that he was in, what ended up happening was, well, they couldn't really afford where they were living before. So circumstances changed. They had to move. They had to find more affordable housing. On top of that, because they were sending their children to private school, they had to also find the money to pay for private school tuition. And so when they found, what she was finding was that it was really a struggle because her husband was still looking, but they were finding ways to, they were finding the money to make ends meet. And I say to make ends meet. But what was happening was, in this process, she wasn't feeling very grateful. She wasn't finding that there was, she couldn't see all of the goodness that was going on around, the good things that were happening in her life because of change. And so her fear was always that, how are we going to make it to the end of the month? How are we going to pay our bills? How are we going to pay for the kids' tuition? How are we going to be able to keep the kids in school? And so with that was a lot of anxiety and a lot of resentment, and they were losing their connection. They weren't really responding well to each other. They weren't really communicating well, because she was feeling resentful because she didn't feel like he was pulling his weight and doing the things that she needed of him. And she felt she was doing everything that she could because she had other outside things that she was to bring in money to support the family. And yet she felt her husband wasn't contributing. And so that was one change. And then they had to then bring the kids out of private school. And she had to then bring her kids and put them into public school. The thing is, with the change into public school, she didn't realize that her kids would thrive wherever they were because they were smart. They were like lapping up the information. They were like just sponges taking it in. And they always got good reports about how resourceful, how intuitive, how much they really wanted to learn. But because she couldn't see that change would be a good thing, she was resisting it. And fear really liked to piggyback. And of course, self-doubt, self-criticism, self-sabotage even. She had a lot of things going on in her life, and she couldn't seem to see over this mountain of, I can't get to the top of the mountain because I don't see that there's any possibility of things changing for the better. But what I ended up helping her with was having her realize that she could find the gratitude in her moment, in her life today with the change, because with change came other things that were really great. Like, for example, she was able to get her kids into public school. And within doing that, she was able to find that her children would thrive in this new environment. And they were doing really good, which then, and then she started having better communication with her husband, instead of coming at him in an accusatory way, but actually meeting him where he was at, having that conversation. They had a meeting of minds, and they were able to start doing other things and come to find that there was something that he could do that would also bring in money to support the family. So they were able to figure out that the changes that happened in their life were for a reason. They were a good thing, and they could find the gratitude. And they could also find the gratitude that even though before they had that money that was like, because he was working this really good job, and her as well, they had these things, because things are really not that important, by the way. Experiences are having those experiences. She realized that those things didn't matter as much as the connection, the deeper bond that she could have with her husband and her children, her two boys. So how can you change your story, right? If that's something like you're going through, that maybe you're going through a change in your life and you don't particularly like the change, maybe you could reframe it and look at, okay, this is happening and there's nothing I can do about it. Again, change is going to happen, right? But if you can find a way to look for the good things due to the change. For example, I'll give you another one based on my own life. My husband and I, we have been for the past couple of years living nomadically, right? We've been going from place to place, Canada, US, and Mexico. Currently we're up in Eastern Canada, in Atlantic Canada to be exact. And before we had embarked on this, we were supposed to, we were talking about Mexico. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. And we've all been talking really about going on, really solidly for a year about going and doing this type of lifestyle. And what ended up happening was we were originally, obviously, in March of March of 2020, we were supposed or April of 2020, we were supposed to go down to Ensenada because we were living in Las Vegas. And so we were going to drive down, which was a 6-hour drive down to Mexico, across the border there, spend time down in Ensenada, which is, again, on the east coast of Mexico, the west coast of Mexico. So just south of San Diego, just south of California. And we were supposed to go there for 6 months and then come back through, drive through the States and go up to Canada. That was how we were supposed to go. But then what happened was COVID came, right? COVID hit. So that changed our plans. Now, we had no choice. We could not control what was coming. There was nothing we could do, right? So what did we do? We ended up instead coming to Canada and spent a glorious 4 months here, which was an amazing summer. It was fabulous. And then we drove through the States down to Florida and had our first flight into Mexico and had our first 5-month stay, almost 6-month stay in Mexico, the first time. So change can happen. It can bring about good things. Yeah, I'm not saying COVID was a great thing to happen, but it didn't stop us from taking this as the next step in our journey. And so we continued on in the journey, except we ended up doing something different. So we drove across the US. It was beautiful because I'd never done that. So I've driven across Canada, but I've never driven the other way across the US. And so that was beautiful for us to see. And we both had some firsts together. My husband, he's driven across the US many times before we met, but some of the states he did not, and we got to share the first time together. So it again it brought about positive, right? It brought about a positive change. It brought about experiences now that we've experienced together, that these beautiful memories that we created together. So, I could have, like I said, the story could have been different. We could have been very upset and said, well, this is just put a what do you call it? Like a pin in the tire and deflated it. And now we can't go anywhere because look at this. Now, here's the other thing. Something else happened on my way, and I'll just tell you real quick. On our way back to Canada the first time, we're towing my husband's Prius. And the last day, I think I might have shared this with you, I'm not sure, but on the very last day of travel, what ended up happening was we were supposed to stay one last night in Maine, but come to find out that you cannot stay in Maine. We could not stay in Maine because under quarantine rules, the only people who could stay for short periods of time were first responders and first responders and people who were essential workers. Well, we were neither of those. So what turned out to be what we thought was going to be a short drive, and then the next morning, our last full day of driving ended up being a much longer day. In fact, it was an 18-hour long day for us in driving because we had to go straight to the border. And then we had to then go straight from the border, another 2.5-hour drive. And by then we were on fumes. We ended up here in Moncton at 3:30 in the morning. And come to find out that our Airbnb host forgot to tell us that he changed the code. So we ended up having to stay one night at the Motel 6. I think that's what it was called. It's called here. It was brand new. There was nobody really there. So it was just us. But we were done. We were toast. So again, things happen, and you either allow those things, make a story about it, and you allow those things to take you and change the way you look at life, and you start telling yourself stories and beating yourself up, right? So my story around what I was saying earlier about that only the chosen few succeed in life, and I realized that's not true. I had to decide that it wasn't true because it didn't feel good to think that or to feel that way. And it wasn't really true anyway, because I had created success on my own. And so if I could do that, that meant that I was worthy. And I realized that. So if you have a story you're telling yourself, how can you change your story? That one story that you keep telling yourself is on repeat. So I'm going to give you some steps so that you can do this, because it's important to be able to take those stories and change it, right? Because I believe that we are writing our stories every day, and how we've been writing our whole entire life. From the moment we were born and we opened our eyes, we took our first breath, we started opening our eyes and looking around and started crawling and then started walking and then started speaking. We've been writing our story, right? And so I want you to be able to take some of these, I want you to take these tips and be able to like change the trajectory that you have, this path you have on your life, that you've been telling this story to yourself, that one that's on constant repeat in your head. And that could show up when you get emotionally triggered, and fear and your emotions double down on each other and have you feeling really badly, and you start talking to yourself really negatively. So how can you change your story? First, you acknowledge your thoughts, because again, your thoughts really are what's fueling how you feel. But what usually is happening is we don't recognize that. We don't instantly realize that when something happens and we start feeling a certain way, that we had that instantaneous, that second before the feeling of how we were, that, that's a thought. And it could be based on, again, that ingrained thought, that fiction that we've been telling ourselves. And it does no longer have to really like manifest itself into a sentence, but you are thinking it without even realizing it. You're subconsciously thinking it, and your feelings are going to get fueled by that. So first you acknowledge, I mean, you're thinking this way. So if you feel a certain way, first go back and track it back to what you're thinking. Like, acknowledge it and be okay with it, okay? That's number one. Number two, don't make yourself wrong for thinking and feeling badly, for thinking and feeling a certain way, for getting in your head, for like the self-talk going. I don't want you to beat yourself up, because you are a human being. And the world can be super scary, especially when you're uncertain, when self-doubt kicks in, when procrastination, when you start feeling, especially fear kicks in. And again, we double down on it, and we're so hard on ourselves, and we make it wrong to think and feel, right? We make it wrong to think and feel. So I want you to stop that now, is to stop making it wrong for you to think and feel a certain way, okay? I'm not saying that it's okay to stay in Negativeville, like to stay in the negative thoughts and feelings. I'm saying just don't make it yourself wrong so that you start, doubling down and beating yourself up. Third, if you want to make changes in your life, like really start throwing out that fiction that you've been telling yourself, that lie that doesn't really serve you. It's not really there to protect you. You thought maybe in your life it was, but it's not. It is a protection mechanism, but it doesn't serve you. I want you to then decide that you want to make changes in your life. I know it sounds simple, but really the way to change is just to decide that you want to change, that you want your story to stop being a fictional tale that you keep telling yourself, and that you say enough is enough, and you allow yourself to change it. Now, fourth, this one is really important to help you start changing the narrative in your head so that you can write a new story, so you can start actually having these, instead of this negative stuff, this fictional stuff, these lies that we've been living by because we felt, unworthy or undeserving. I want you to start to take a journal, and to, even if you can bring a journal with you wherever you go for just a little bit, just so you can start getting a gauge on how often this is happening to you, so you can become more self-aware of it. It would be really, really freeing. Plus, when you have your journal, what you're doing is you're getting things out of your head, so you're no longer carrying them around with you. So you're going to start journaling every single day. And every time you have a moment in your life that triggers you and you start feeling that negative way, that fictional story that you're telling yourself, I want you to stop and write it down, what you're thinking, right? So first, you're going to write it down. What just happened? You're going to be as detailed as you can, because what ends up happening is over time we can forget, and then we don't really remember how things went. And it's easier when you have it written so that you can like, oh, this is what happened. This is really what happened, not what I'm thinking hours later that happened. So what happened? How did it make you feel? Again, getting in touch with your feelings is okay. And then ask yourself, how did you respond? Because again, those fictional things that we tell ourselves, those stories that don't serve us, they're going to have us responding a certain way when our emotions kick in and take over. What I'm trying to help you with is so that your emotions don't get to be the one in the driver's seat, but you do. So how did you respond? You want to write that down. And what meaning did you give to what happened, right? Because again, getting back to those feelings, tracking it back to what you're thinking, again, split second, it could be ingrained so much that it's subconsciously you're thinking it and you don't even realize that you're feeling really bad. So you want to start thinking, okay, what am I thinking? Like, why am and really what that means is that you need to track it back to how you were feeling or are at the time, because it's that little step, like I said, between a trigger and your emotion that's calling the shots. And that's how you're thinking. But again, it could be subconscious because it's been with you for such a long time. It's been something you've been calling your truth when actually it's a lie. It's not true. It's a fictional story because you probably are afraid to maybe make change. But you can do this. I know you can. Next, you're going to make a list of all those things you're thinking. Write them out. Say them out loud and take a mental note of how it makes you feel. Because sometimes when you say it out loud, you're like, that kind of sounds ridiculous that I'm thinking that way, right? You're not shaming yourself. You're just acknowledging that, oh, yeah, I don't like what I'm thinking. That's not serving me. Because you most likely will start to feel uncomfortable, right? Because it doesn't feel good what your thoughts are, especially if it's fictional story. And then you're going to ask yourself these questions. And I'll put this in the homework because I know it's a lot that I'm telling you, but I'll chart it out for you so you have it. You're going to ask yourself, is what I'm thinking really true? And does it have to be true? Right? Because that's the key thing here. Does it have to be true? Does my making it true serve me or does it harm me? Again, like I said, I thought only privileged people can succeed in life. I didn't think I or the chosen few. I thought I wasn't a chosen one because I lived in social housing. I grew up with a single mom. We didn't have much. I mean, we had stuff, but we didn't have much. And then the next question is, can I change my mind? And the answer to that is absolutely 100% you can change your mind because it's your story. You're the author, so you can do what you want. It's learning to reconstruct the story you've been telling yourself because of the meaning you've given it and learning to change it to something more positive, something that serves you, right? So let me give you an example. Remember, I talked about feedback. I said truth or fiction. Feedback is meant to help you grow or is a personal attack on your character, right? So feedback. If someone gives you feedback and you take it as criticism, as a personal attack on your character, I want you to ask yourself again, is it true that what they're doing is attacking your personal character? And does it have to be true? In fact, even like what they said after you've written down, read it out loud. Now, and even go one step further and reflect upon the character of the person giving you the feedback. Because maybe you're in a work environment and maybe they're giving you feedback on the outcome of a project that you are working on. And so the feedback is about the outcome of what you were working on and not about you. Now, maybe and most likely the reason you don't like feedback is because of an experience from your past around getting feedback that may have legitimately been criticism, by the way, but you've now attached negativity to any type of feedback you get based on that previous experience, right? So again, it's the story you're telling as your truth. Oh, any feedback I get, personal attack. Yep, they're talking about me. They're putting me down. They're not talking. Oh, they're saying that I could do this better with this project. The outcome. Actually, what they're saying is that I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. That's the stories that you're telling yourself, right? That's why I want you to become more consciously aware of how you are experiencing when feedback happens. If this happens to be something, the story that you're telling yourself, and it's your fictional story that you're telling yourself, because you believe that every type of feedback is criticism. It's a personal attack on your character. Now, some people are going to be like that, right? I just want you to know that. There are going to be people out there who really are going to be criticizing you. That's when, again, you ask the question, this person, how do I know them? Are they really the ones that are they really this malicious? Do I have a good relationship with them? Have they always been like this, always putting me down? Or is this something that I can actually reframe that, look at what they're saying and look at what they're attaching it to, which is not me, it's the thing, right? Because that's what I want you to start thinking about. Do you see where I'm going with this? You can reframe it because, again, if the person really is just talking about an outcome, giving you feedback and how to improve an outcome, something that you've been working on, and they're saying, hey, if you did this, it would be better. And they're not really attacking you personally because you know them. They've never really been that way because now you thought, okay, I know this person. They've pretty much always been in my corner, never really put me down. And so they're telling me something about this thing I'm doing, right? And you can remove yourself from the equation of being the focus of the actual meaning of the feedback, right? Which is about the thing. And then you can determine whether or not it was meant to help you do better in that task or even for future work projects, right? Because one of the things someone said to me once when I was working with a lawyer in Vancouver. I was covering for a young lady who was on maternity leave, and her boss was tough. But I learned something from him, which I've carried with me ever since. And what I loved about it was this. He stopped me when he was telling me to do something. I immediately was writing it down. He said, wait. I want you to listen first. I want you to hear me first, what I'm telling you. And then I want you to be able to repeat it back to me so I know that you understood what I've asked you to do. Not because he's trying to make me feel bad or think that I'm stupid. He wanted me to make sure I understood because I was actually learning something new working with him. And so when he did that and I would repeat it back and then I would write it down, that's when I realized this is really good because now I understand if I don't know something, it could be because I've rushed through and missed it because I was writing it rather than listening first, repeating it back, and then writing it down. It was very helpful and I took it with me. It was one of the best feedbacks I ever got. And I could have thought he's talking to me condescendingly. He thinks I'm stupid. He thinks I'm a 10-year-old child. Or, like I said, I could flip it to mean he was helping me so I would do a better job with what I was being asked to do. It was nothing about me as a person. It was about the job I was doing. So you understand where I'm going with this? Most of the time, feedback is about growth. And again, there are going to be people out there who might really, truly mean criticism. They might really be personally attacking your character. And that's how you start to learn. You start to pick up on who these people are. But to understand that you have to be able to take a moment to reflect on it so you can consciously decide whatever that is going to mean to you, right? So you don't get caught up in emotionally spiraling every time you get feedback. Because again, if you can fully understand that feedback is about something you did, as it's not a criticism about the person you are, but helping you to grow, helping you to do better in something that you're doing. Does that make sense to you? I would love to know if this makes sense to you. So you can just say makes sense, or put a 1 in the comments if you're getting this, because I really truly want you to be able to use this for, your benefit going forward, especially if that is something that you are saying is your truth. Maybe you were like me, thinking privileged, only the privileged few get to have, like, success in life, right? Or maybe you think something about yourself, like the way you look. Oh, only pretty girls get the boys. That's not true. I truly believe that I would rather be with someone who has substance than somebody who's only looking to be with someone because of the exterior, because the exterior starts to deteriorate because we age, right? We get old. What's on the inside, that matters the most. I want to be with somebody who cares about what's coming from here, from my heart, who gets me, who understands this, right? So it's learning to become self-aware of how you're using your senses to tell your brain what your experiences are, and getting curious around them so that you can start focusing on telling yourself more empowering stories around feedback or anything else in your life more often, and using those stories to help you change your negative self-talk, changing your fictional stories to something that you can get behind, to be your truth, right? That really helps you, that pushes you forward, that makes you a better person. So I hope that was helpful for you to hear today. I really, really loved doing this training with you, because I know how important, I know how it is, how the stories that we can tell ourselves, they can be debilitating. They can keep us, like, from moving forward and stuck. In fact, maybe you feel stuck in your life. Maybe you feel like, I can't move forward because there's this story in my head that I can't do anything. For example, I'm running a masterclass, right? 4 weeks in July, all 4 Thursdays, going live at 3 p.m. I'm going to be actually doing them by Zoom. We'll meet by Zoom, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to be talking about building your extraordinary life by design, by your design. This is what you will do for you, right? And one of the things I talk about is time, and how using that, taking back my time, it literally saved my life. I kid you not. I mean that with every core of myself. I mean that. Taking back my time saved my life. Being able to effectively and efficiently use my time has been life changing, because there's structure. I put structure to my time. And with that structure came much more freedom than I ever thought was possible. And I get things done more efficiently, more effectively. And I'm spending less time doing certain things. I'm not doing everything all at once. I'm not trading family time because I think I have to be sitting here working on my business or anything else that I'm working on. And I'm not trading that valuable time working on my business and I'm not feeling guilty because I'm over here working on my business, because I went all in with my family time, because I had the time, because I used my time efficiently. So I'm running that masterclass. I'm going to put the link in the comments after the video, because I can't do that through StreamYard. Facebook and StreamYard are friendly to each other. They won't allow me to post. So I'll put that in there for you. But I really, truly, if you are looking for, you want to take back your time, this is a masterclass you don't want to miss. Again, it's going to just be the 4 Thursdays. We're going to meet for an hour, and come and look, come and listen, because you really don't know what you're missing unless you take a minute to look, right? To actually look and see what it is that you are doing, because it's up to you. Like, you can decide you want more for your life, or you can decide, well, I'm just going to let life pass me by and just let the chips fall where they may and complain about it. But, I'm just too afraid. Or you can actually come and look and see if maybe there's something I share with you that you can actually start using that will make a difference in how you show up in your day to day. Because if you don't stop and take a look today, or take a closer look at what you're doing with your life and the stories that you're telling yourself, the fictional stories that have become so ingrained in you that they become your truth, how will you ever know what's waiting for you around the corner? Because you are stopping yourself, because fear is telling you to double down on that story that no longer serves you. It doesn't serve you. In fact, it never really did, but we've allowed our stories, especially from our past, to help us to get through life. But a lot of them have been stopping us from stepping into building and living and having the life that we've always wanted to live and living that life. And it doesn't mean you have to do anything huge or outrageous, but it's just actually living your life. And the only way to do that is if you get into your life and change those fictional stories into more empowering stories that become your truth, that you can lean on, that you can lean into, that can help you navigate your world. You can become a better person. You can create those deeper bonds with your family members or with your significant other if you don't have children, or with your deeper bonds with your kids, spending more time with your family, doing those fun things, not missing out on those priceless moments. And you have the time to do the freedom to do that. And you can still have the other things in your life that light you up, right? But you're not feeling guilty or resentful. You don't feel you're being pulled. And you're in the story of your life and you're no longer letting fiction rule you. So if that's you, I'm excited. I'm going to put the link in the comments. And I hope to see you there. I hope that you sign up. I'm looking forward to it. All right, ladies, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Remember to navigate your day with an attitude of gratitude, because with the right attitude, we'll be in the right mindset for when life throws her curveballs or puts up those roadblocks in your way. You'll be in a better frame of mind to manage your emotional trigger moments. I will talk to you soon. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys again soon. Bye for now.